Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy, and today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. He is the host of the insanely popular podcast, Fat Burning Man, a New York Times bestselling author, and he is a TV performance coach who is here today to optimize our performance mindset and longevity. Welcome to the show, Abel James. How you doing there?
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Let's rock.
Yeah, this is very exciting. Like, you've done so many different things here. Like, obviously you've got the great podcast Fat Burning Man, which is being in the top health and performance podcast for over a dozen years now. You've been keynote speakers for like the federal government, lectured at top universities and Fortune 500 companies. You've been an expert coach on an ABC TV show for fitness and weight loss. And on top of that, you're an insanely good musicianist. Top 20 artist is like, what the hell, Abel? Like, this is amazing stuff.
I appreciate that. The way that I see it, though, is normal for me.
Yeah.
I've always followed whatever the whims are of that kind of energy that you're pulled to. So it doesn't feel like you have to push and work really, really hard. Although I do that sometimes in certain ways. It's more of like trying to choose these things. Over the course of your entire life, you can do a lot of cool stuff, right? And I always wanted to play music, not just play music though, but learn a bunch of different instruments. And I found that, the thing that I really get a lot of value out of and enjoy the most is the beginning part of the curve into the intermediate as you approach mastery. But once you kind of get, the closer you get to mastery with an instrument or a skill or a craft or whatever it is, to just maintain that level of skill, you need to spend, I don't know, an hour or hours a day practicing that just to maintain there without even getting better. And so that for me takes me on a lot of different paths that naturally draw my attention before I reach that critical point where I get bored.
So were you into music before fitness or
Yeah.
did they?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say so because the first, like most powerful memory that I have of doing something that affected other people was through music, just picking up a clarinet and making a few sounds for the holiday season or whatever. And all the adults are like, their faces are lighting up and they're clapping and dancing around. It's like, wow, I'd never seen that before being a little kid. I'm like, this is pretty cool stuff. And I wasn't super interested in athletics when I was really young, but I did by the time I got to be, a preteen teenager. I was really into sports and was huge into trail running and mountain biking, especially.
Nice stuff. Now, let's go back to the clarinet, because when people mention instruments, clarinet is kind of like one of those background ones. And you're not a background musicianist, though. Like, you do so many different things with music. How does this all kind of coordinate? And do you think the clarinet needs more attention?
I love the clarinet. I loved the clarinet as soon as I started playing it. Although I will say I really wanted to play saxophone instead. My parents were not only thrifty, but smart as well, in the sense that they wanted me to show that I meant it, right? And that I actually did like this and would dedicate some time to practicing and that sort of thing. And so I got my mom's ancient clarinet that had been rotting in my grandparents' basement for decades, right? And got that thing out. My parents tuned it up a little bit. They said, if you get good at this and you save some money over the summer mowing lawns and that sort of thing. I was in whatever it was, 3rd, 4th grade. They're like, you can, start saving up. We'll buy you a used saxophone. We'll help you buy a used saxophone, but you need to demonstrate this first. And so I was obsessed with the idea of getting to saxophone because obviously, yes, way cooler. Even to like young kids, they know that saxophone is for whatever reason way cooler than clarinet. But as I started playing, I really started to fall in love with music, seeing the links between musical notes from a clarinet or other instruments as equivalent to or similar to the human voice, in the sense that you can affect,
Uh,
like a mother can affect a child's biology, essentially, and their physiology and how they feel, certainly their emotional state, just by kind of using sing-songy language before the infant can even understand what any of that language or the words mean. You're translating something, and you're communicating something, and it's resonating with them. And so I've always really seen that as the thing that music can do for people, changing their emotional state, usually lifting them up, or if they're in a more negative state, then it can help kind of help them experience that and then move through it. If you think about a funeral and or some of the ceremonies around loss, it's a different soundscape than when people are celebrating. The music is fantastically different because it's wired into us. But once you get to a certain level of creating, and you don't have to get very far in terms of technical skill, you can also have that effect on other people. And that's what I've always been fascinated by. It's taken me down the path of learning many different instruments, and ultimately using my voice even more, not just for singing, but also the spoken word, which to me, the spoken word is very much like singing in the sense that it has inflection, pauses, rhythms, and all the other characteristics that you would naturally find in music. And so if you're speaking the right way, then you can kind of do the same thing.
Now, all of this kind of developed over the years, though, and a lot of this is kind of looking back and, 2020 hindsight, right?
Sure.
But you started to pick up more and more of these, and it was mainly interest and the feeling you got from these that developed the passion. What was the catalyst with fitness then? Like, what changed that was like, oh, this is actually fun. It's not grueling work. And yeah, it's now this passion, and I'm going to share with others, and I'm going to combine my talents. What was kind of the catalyst there? Like, because it wasn't always, as you mentioned, oh, I was into fitness from a young age and it just blossomed. It was something
Yeah.
else. What was it?
Yeah. Well, I was an athlete in junior high and high school. And the thing that really ticked me off, though, was when I was shortly after college, paying off my loans, working in consulting. That was the first time I had great health insurance. And so I wanted to use it, and I did. And so I went into what was supposedly the best doctor in DC. And, I was peeing in jars and getting my blood taken every couple of weeks, and I'd get this spit out of reports. And I actually started looking through them, but in conjunction with following my doctor's advice, who said, no, what you were doing, coming from the backwoods of New Hampshire, my mom was into holistic medicine and herbal treatments and all of this stuff way ahead of his time in many ways, although it's existed for a long, long time in
Exactly.
the underground world of all this. But anyway, I'm in many ways kind of from that world, and was rebelling against it when I decided to follow my doctor's advice, who said, make sure to, based on your family history of heart disease and, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, and all these other biomarkers, based upon that, here's how you should be eating. This is what you need to stop doing. This is what you should do instead, whatever. So I was running already 20 or 30 miles a week just to try to keep the weight off. And I'd always been a runner. And so I figured that I had to keep that up to not get fat as I aged, even though I was in my early 20s. And my doctor said, basically give up red meat and stop eating as much meat as you can. So eat as little meat as you can. I went vegetarian for a while. Also started eating no dietary cholesterol, or as little as possible, and doing all these very specific things that took a lot of work and a lot of planning. The problem was, over the course of the next 18 months, I rapidly put on 20, 30 pounds. My triglycerides went straight to the roof. My blood pressure went up.
Whoa.
All these things that we were trying to avoid rapidly got worse. And I could see that happening on my biomarkers. And it took coming home one night. I had just recently moved to Austin, and I came home on a Friday night and lost everything in an apartment fire. It's just a 30-foot wall of flames. So all my instruments, the book I was working on, my album, like my entire life was in shambles. My work computers, so I didn't have any clothes. My car was out front, so I couldn't drive that either. And I was in this spot where I just had to be really honest about myself and where I was going, where I was at, and all that. I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, dude, you're kind of a mess right now. Like, yes, your life is a mess, but all of this is out of my control now. Let's at least focus on this to make sure we, if you rejigger the trajectory when you're younger, you can land in a completely different place down the line. And so I re-examined what my doctor had told me and rebelled against that, and it kind of put my nose in the books, combined what I had learned growing up from the holistic world of natural medicine and honoring nature with kind of new things I learned about how to time protein and carbs based around your training, and combine that also with cycles of undereating and overeating. So like a cyclic ketosis, sometimes you hear it called, but intermittent fasting was really the thing that I embraced for the first time ever. Because previous to that, I was hungry every 2 hours. I would get low blood sugar and really foggy. Once I embraced intermittent fasting, not to an extreme degree, just kind of experimenting with it, all of a sudden the weight came off, and also some other dietary tweaks, really focusing on real food, not being afraid of protein or red meats anymore. Focusing on
what
good quality.
Actually catalyzed the intermittent fasting? Because to be honest, up until maybe a few years ago, there was like zero information out there on it. It wasn't a buzz phrase yet. So how did you go, oh yeah, I need to not eat for a while? Because the tendency there, even with educated doctors, was that, oh no, you got to keep your blood sugar stable, so you need to be constantly eating. So how'd you stumble across this?
Yeah, fasting also is another one of those things that's been around for quite some time, usually in a religious context. Yeah. But in terms of training for fitness, it was a few different things that I found. I was still really into running, and I had right around that time changed my form and gone for relearning how to run barefoot only, and kind of building from the ground up with a different way of moving.
Right.
And so I kind of re-examined a whole bunch of different things around the same time, like the world of grounding, circadian biology, fasting, cold thermogenesis, even red light panels were around back then. So it's really interesting for me to see some of these things hit when they do, because even on the TV show, like I was talking, and I couldn't believe they let me do this, but I was talking about intermittent fasting on primetime ABC television.
Yeah.
And a lot of people took it up and got great results by having the freedom to say, oh, I don't need to wake up and like eat a product immediately every single day. And also the biggest thing that I found was that when I did do that, when I woke up and I had some orange juice, or I had some cereal or some whole wheat toast, or the other healthy, in air quotes, thing I was supposed to have around morning time, I would get just crazy hungry for the rest of the day as soon as I started eating. But if I didn't, if I just held off, had some water, went for a walk or whatever, then I could easily just wait until noon. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a little hungry now. Let's have some lunch. And just little tweaks like that. Or the opposite works even better. If you eat a nice big breakfast that's protein heavy, and then also a relatively moderate size or even large lunch, and then you don't really eat much in the evening, that can work great for people too.
Yes.
But the biggest thing was getting away from all of these products and hyper processed foods that are sold as health foods.
Absolutely. Eat real food.
Yeah.
And I love the title of the book. And
thanks.
Yeah, man. Wild diets. Like, people back in the day weren't obese. So yeah, it makes sense. Okay, well, let's actually look at what they were eating and how they were eating. And you really go through that in detail. What are some of the highlights that you wish people would just pick up the book and look at?
I mean, you don't even need to read the whole book. You can just look at a page, right? I tried to get just the principles of fat loss and body transformation, physical health, kind of down to like one page. But practically speaking, most of us don't even have an attention span for that at this point. So if you want to simplify it even further, maybe I'll just rattle off a few things. But protein is the most important thing for most people to focus on.
Right.
Avoiding the obviously bad stuff, the hyper-processed foods, fried foods, sugary foods, seed oils and vegetable oils, but you can kind of simplify that by just thinking of, I'm going to avoid all fried foods, even the ones that don't seem like they're fried. I'm going to look into the ones that are fried across the board and make sure that I'm going for, baked, steamed. It can be cooked on a skillet with fat if it's a protein for sure, but you don't want to be using industrial gear oil, low quality fats like vegetable oils and seed oils. There are a lot of things in the States that are sold as food that don't technically qualify as food in other countries. And so to me, I think that should be under extreme suspicion, and we should subtract those foods from our normal day-to-day eating, or even entirely from our lives, because once you have some level of standard for this, then you don't need to rely on all of these kind of quick hits of energy that you might get from these sugary processed foods and that sort of thing. So anyway, hitting the protein, getting rid of the hyper-processed carbs, having a high-quality source of fat, and the good ones to have around generally come from the high-quality proteins themselves, which hopefully could be as close to wild or grass-fed, raised in the natural environment as possible, as opposed to the industrial raised, cattle operations and the farmed fish. And, we've all seen pictures of how horrific some of the feeding operations and living standards are for chickens, pigs, cows, and that sort of thing. So try to get high quality food, as high quality as you can. And the fats that come from those animals are quite healthful, as well as avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, and nuts and seeds. I'm a big fan of dairy as well, especially regenerative dairy and organic dairy. If you can get it and prioritize it. It doesn't work well for everybody. And then also, there are tools. You don't need a protein powder. You don't need protein shakes and that sort of thing. But for a lot of people, they can be useful, because you want to be getting at least 150 grams of protein for most people. And the irony is, you think that a lot of the young bodybuilder, muscle-bound folks who are obsessed with protein, that they would be the only ones who need it. But in fact, as we age, we don't digest it quite as well, so we actually need more. So prioritizing protein throughout your life is extraordinarily important. And then combining what you're eating with how you're moving at or around the time of meals is really important, such that, for example, if you eat a relatively carb heavy meal, you have some rice and you've got some chicken, you've got some veggies or whatever, but you also ate some toast or you had some dessert with it. And so you think probably your blood sugar is going to be rising over the next few hours, which it will for almost everybody if that's what you just ate. If you go for a walk, even for 5 or 10 minutes, just before mealtime or especially right after mealtime, that blunts the spike. And all of a sudden that extreme glucose spike and then drop doesn't happen, because your body has changed its metabolic state and now can shuttle all of these nutrients into your muscle cells and the rest of your body. So this is something that's, it takes a little bit of getting the context
too. Like if you had to go forage for your own food, you'd have to walk to go get it. And then you'd have to walk back after you got it.
That's exactly right. So we need to artificially recreate what we were doing back in the day, just as a function of living, right? Like we had to move our bodies and lift things, hunt things, carry things every day, right? Carry water.
Absolutely.
So we need to readjust what our natural baseline of movement is. So it's not like you have to be a fitness bunny or work out all the time, but you do need to basically work out every single day, because even in little amounts, the little amounts are the most important, because if you don't, you lose the ability to move that way and you'll age faster. That's just how it works.
Yeah. So there's this simplicity behind things that, think naturally what would occur. And then I know you, like when you started to talk about the voice and music as well, which we'll dive into in a bit as well again, is that there's some high complex hacks out there too. And you've interviewed 500 plus experts on this, like Dr. Mark Hyman, JP Sears, Gretchen Rubin, all Terry Walls, geez, the list just goes on and on. What have you kind of learned and compiled from these people you've interviewed as well, and kind of the rabbit holes you've fallen down that you're like, oh, I, I just really like to share this theory or this part of this adventure into health as well.
Yeah, well, if you think about Dr. Terry Walls, that's an example that many people probably still haven't heard of, but she is an incredibly inspiring woman who I've known, gosh, for well over a decade now. But she was suffering from multiple sclerosis, and it came on relatively quickly. And she had been athletic, working professionally as a researcher, really accomplished woman. And all of a sudden, her body stopped working, and she was in a tilt recline wheelchair. And her doctors basically said that she was going to be sentenced to this wheelchair for the rest of her life and just slowly degrade more and more over time. And she didn't accept that and wanted to do everything that she possibly could to reverse this and help make it better. And so she embraced natural lifestyle changes by mostly changing her diet because she didn't have the option of movement at that point. And also detoxification, because sometimes heavy metal buildup and other assaults from the environment can affect some people more than others and lead to serious problems that if you don't get the cause of the problem out of there or resolved in some way, then you're just going to be treating symptoms forever. So she went on this incredible journey of healing herself, and for the past 15 plus years now has been athletic. She got out of the wheelchair and has been out there lecturing, doing TED Talks, appearing on podcasts, writing books, as someone who literally reversed a disease that she said could not be reversed by something as simple as dietary changes. And here's the crazy part, though, especially over time, certain people get this memo and they're like, okay, sign me up. What do I have to do? And they do it. That is a small minority of people, though. Most people have to wait for that horrible thing to happen in their own life where they actually get sick and are approaching their deathbed or on their deathbed, or someone close to them has just passed away, something like that. And then they're
absolutely. Like, I couldn't agree more. Like, I see it all the time in clinical practice, is that a lot of people, they want a bad diagnosis. And it's actually hard to describe to them. It's like, no, you don't want anything worse than what I'm saying here. Like, what I'm saying here is, you can take control of this now before it becomes worse. And a lot of them, they're like, oh, but I thought it was really bad. I'm like, not yet.
Yeah. But, even in the face of all this, a lot of people don't make the change, right? They hear it's as simple as, making sure that you're eating fresh foods, you're not going out and eating fried foods, or you're reducing the amount of alcohol that you drink is a big one, right? Just like certain things like that are pretty obvious and not insanely difficult tweaks to make in your own life, like revamping your dietary habits or eating a protein and a vegetable instead of just a sandwich all the time is kind of just like a substitution. It might cost less, it might cost more. It's not really going to be that much more difficult, but it's just like a little swap that you make. But despite knowing this, that you can reverse horrific, basically life-changing or life-ending diseases and situations, you can reverse that by making these little switches. A lot of people still don't do it. And so that's why I keep getting after it. And I don't want to be repeating myself. But I think talking about this message of health and around self-empowerment and responsibility as well, that it's really on us. We need doctors and we need a team of experts and scientists and that sort of thing to be pushing the fields forward and to help support us. But it's really on us. And if you don't take it seriously in your own day-to-day life, then no one else can really help you that much, because it's all about those tiny little things that you're doing or not doing invisibly, that your subconscious is driving throughout the days, that add up cumulatively over the years to you being in a state of thriving, vibrant health, or one that's just rapidly degenerating. And the truth is, when you look around at how polluted things are, whether it's our food system or our environment, and a lot of the other things that are acting against us, like the availability of hyperpalatable food, we really have to have our shields up.
Yeah. Now, people have heard this and then going back into those little changes and things. You're big into the optimization side of things too. So, of course, people need a big push sometimes to get going, or a small push. So, motivationally wise or habit wise, and it doesn't always need to be a big, like, stadium full of a guru telling people to get up and that state. But what are easy kind of things, maybe even music or other kind of cues, have you found have just really helped people to get into a state where they start to develop these just little changes in their lives?
Actually, I think probably the biggest part of it is your community and the people around you.
Yes.
Because if you are surrounded by people who are just by default going out and they're not eating the buns on their burgers for lunch or something like that, then you're not the weird one for doing the same thing. But you reverse that, right? And you go out for burgers with your friends and you're just like, yeah, I'll have a lettuce wrap around my burger. And everyone's like, what? Are you an idiot? Like, what's the matter with you? Eat a burger with us. And so that applies to everything, though, from food to fitness. And you need to either be willing to be the weird one of the group that you stay in, or hopefully combine that with the power that comes with joining a group of health conscious people who are really focused on this and focused on the future and understand that our health is a responsibility and it's a really delicate thing that we all need to focus on, because if we don't, it goes away. So when you can join a group like that or a community of that, like that, and it doesn't have to be in person, but it's better if it is.
Right.
Once you join that, it'll kind of like slowly change your reality of what's normal and what's possible. When I first got introduced to a lot of the people in the world of ancestral health and paleo and Weston A. Price and slow food movements and local food way back like 15 years ago now, a lot of the people had found these movements because they were almost dead beforehand, or they were 300 pounds overweight, or something totally extreme happened in their lives from a health perspective that changed their, where they were coming from, so that they went back hard on the other side and believed in this message of using food and lifestyle as a lever to enact major changes in people's personal lives and also their communities and people around you at scale, just by making these little tweaks. It just so happens, though, that a lot of these tweaks are in direct violation of what we've been told by traditional dogma and industry and government recommendations around food for a long, long time. So it takes a lot of courage to go against some of these things that you've been told is true for a long time. That in fact,
Right. And where do you see that right now? Do you see that we're kind of at the tipping point where things could actually be tipped in the favor of health now versus
I think so.
in sick care?
I think so. It is changing, though, in the sense that if you were lean 10 or 20 years ago, then chances are you were doing the lifestyle things around that to make that happen. These days, you might just be on a peptide, a GLP. And so similarly, if you have like a chiseled jawline and like a deep voice and big muscles or whatever, it used to be that was from genetics and lifestyle. And these days, like a lot of people who don't consider themselves like bodybuilding juicers or whatever are juiced to the teeth on testosterone, growth hormone, and peptides and stem cells and all these other things. Not that this is good or bad. It's just that like the world of natural health is diverging from the world of performance-based health, or artificial exogenous interventions are cool over here. You can do steroids, right? Like they're fine or whatever. In this world, that's different from kind of the world that I came from and where I intend to go as well. Not that these other newfangled things aren't very useful and effective in some cases. I'm sure they are. But I think that it's really on us to do the things that we know work, that are simple and easy in our own lives, to be as healthy as possible. And then all of the other stuff that we could add on top of it, or that could hopefully help us get through some injury or some other thing that we're going through later in life, we can save those extra things for later instead of, the thing that I think is a travesty right now, there are a lot of women and men, young influencers, as well as people in their 20s and 30s, a lot of people younger than I am who are taking hormone replacement therapy as young as their teens, 20s, and certainly 30s. And that is just terrifying to me. Everyone should have their own decision.
With that statement. Yeah, that's something that there can be irreversible damage, or it's going to take a while to make a change back. And we just don't know enough on it. And you're right. It would be better if the body produces it. And how does this go into later in life then, that longevity model? And I know you're working hard on this, and you probably have a few things you want to kind of tease people with in the next few minutes. What would that be?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the results that people are going to get are through subtraction, not addition. So when you look at what's rewarded in the modern internet, it's always the whiz bang, newfangled, cool thing, this thing, or this thing works, this thing doesn't work, but it's the same thing, right? Like, so the people who are out there 1 year saying, this is the protocol and this is why the protocol works and it's the 100%, we know it's true. And then a couple of years later, they go, oh, yeah. No, this is the protocol. And that one was wrong, but don't worry about that. This is the protocol. This is 100% right. Like, those people, listen to them a little bit less. That's what I usually do. If people are, now we should be allowed to change our perspective, especially in the face of new information. But I get a little bit annoyed when I see people doing it out of from where I'm sitting, having been in this world for a while, I can kind of see people putting on a circus show and moving the goalposts as they go along and getting rewarded for it. So that annoys me, and I hate to see people falling for it. And so basically, turn down the noise. And it doesn't have to be my book, but go out and read some books instead of scrolling to try to get your entertainment or your information, because it's really, it's information, it's entertainment, but it's really not something that we're learning from at this point. The short form stuff, it drives our attention, it drives our engagement, but we're not actually processing and absorbing important ideas this way. That's what I believe. So
right, and most we're consuming instead of doing at that stage in time too.
And it's the taking action. That's the only thing that matters. So it doesn't matter how much you know. That's why you see a lot of people out there who are not intellectually gifted crushing it.
Yes.
Just totally crushing it, because they're doing it. They're doing the right thing. They're not worried about learning all this stuff. They are doing it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a cumulative effect, just like you mentioned, all the success things that happen. It's like, yeah, this has happened over years. And yeah, that is the kind of the new model here, whether it's learning, whether it's with health and with our wealth as well, that you can't have all these great things in life if you ignore your own body. And I really applaud you on the work you're doing and the changes you're making and how you're helping people out there. Obviously, there's a ton of ways people can find information from yourself and the people you interview. How do they look you up? How do they follow you? And where should they go?
Yeah, I've got a Substack at abeljames.substack.com, and I've got video and audio of the podcast and some writing as well. My website is abeljames.com, and you can look up the Abel James podcast. And, plenty of books and other things out there. And I'll be coming out with a longevity book relatively soon too, although I got to get to work.
Right. And the great thing is these resources, you can do something with before and after and or during. And that's the great thing about podcasts is you can be going for a walk right now and doing something active as well. So we are pushing what we're preaching here. And once again, I applaud you with everything you're doing. And I'm looking forward to this longevity book. I hope you knock it out next month, but I know it might take a while.
I'll see what I can do. Hey, thanks so much for having me. This has been an awesome conversation.
This has been fun. Thank you, Abel. And for everyone listening, definitely check out Abel James and stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.